Well, welcome to the Speak with People podcast. My name is Jason Raitz. I am so excited you're joining us today. This podcast exists because words matter, and we believe healthy communication is oxygen for your relationships and your leadership. So whether you communicate one-on-one, on a team, from a stage, or from behind a screen, we hope to challenge you and encourage you to communicate in healthy ways, because we know when you value healthy communication, your world will change for the better, and you will change someone else's world. Well, today I am so incredibly excited. We have an incredible communicator, incredible speaker, comedian, leader on the podcast, someone who's I've followed along for a while. I'm a bit of a fan, and so I don't want to get too crazy, but really appreciate following them as they communicate. And I've learned so much from them. But like I said, he's a comedian, he's a speaker, and he's one of our keynote speakers at the Speakers Conference in March. And I'm humbled that he is going to be a part. Mike Goodwin, welcome to the Speak with People podcast.
Jason, thank you for having me. Good communication is oxygen. That's incredible, man. That's a great line.
Well, thank you. Well, it's so great to see you. Thanks for, before Christmas, spending some time with us. I hope, your Christmas planning is going great. Do you have any, are you traveling anymore before the end of the year, or are you?
I am. I actually have an event tomorrow morning, so I'll be heading out this afternoon. Then I have something this weekend. I won't wrap up until the 22nd of December.
Okay. All right. Well, and you live in a part of the world where I want to visit someday, because I'm one of the biggest fans of Hootie and the Blowfish. And
oh yeah,
Hootie and Blowfish are pretty important around your area. So
they are. Yeah, they went to the University of South Carolina, and Darius Rucker, he is a tremendous fan. I don't know about the Blowfish. I think they are, but Hootie is definitely giving out free concerts when we win big games. And we do have, it's actually funny, we had a minor league team called the Blowfish. They were like the Lexington Blowfish. So their legend continues to extend beyond musical exploits. It continues.
Oh, I love it. Well, I'm such a fan. Last January, my wife and I went to Cancun, Mexico, where they hosted their first ever Hootie Fest. So I'm in that category.
Oh, you're a fan. Like you're a fan cube.
Yes.
Power. Like, I get it.
I love it. Well, hey, before we kind of jump into the questions, maybe you could just give us, a little bit about yourself, what you do, your family, all that kind of stuff.
Right. I'm a refreshingly funny comedian and keynote speaker. Michael Goodwin. I live in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm the husband of one wife. I have two children. And my children, I have a 16-year-old daughter that causes me to pray regularly. And I have a 12-year-old son that causes me to drink regularly. No, but I do stand up full time. I've been at it for 10 years, and I work primarily in churches, corporate arenas, and clubs. And my goal is just to make or leave places better than the way that I found them.
Oh, I love that. And correct me if I'm wrong, before that, were you a teacher?
Yeah, so I was a college counselor at a private school. But so when you work at a private school, everybody has a class.
Yes.
You will teach. So
that's right.
I was in education. I worked at the University of South Carolina before taking this job at an Episcopal high school here, where it was a K-3 through 12. So it was all ages. And I worked there for 8 years while I was building my comedy career on the side.
Wow. That's incredible. Well, kind of diving in, today's podcast is all about the world of laughter, the power of laughter. How does it specifically play a role in our communication? How can we embrace it? If we're stage communicators, how can we help people laugh? If we have friends and family who don't like to laugh, how can we be close to them? So just kind of jumping into the first question. When did you know, take us back in time. When did you know that you had the ability to make someone laugh or help someone laugh? Did it come naturally? Did you have to work at it? Take us back in time for that.
That's a great question, and it's not a question that people are prepared for emotionally, because they're smiling and they're happy. It's not a happy story, right? So I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. My parents were argumentative and very combative with one another. And they were,
Mm.
I mean, it was regularly. And I'm the oldest of three. And so this one particular time, I'm 8 at the time, and it was kind of like the same routine. They would get into the arguments. My brother, sister, and I would cry and then ask them to stop. So this particular time, my father, he leaves, and my mother goes to prepare dinner. Like, that was just a regular run of the mill evening. And so in that moment, I realized that something needed to happen. Like, it was very tense in my home,
Mm.
and my mother was, still upset. And I really had the thought of, hey man, I need to do something to make my mother laugh. Like,
Mm.
that was the thought that came into my little 8-year-old brain. Because physically, I could not do anything. I could not stop what was happening. It was very frustrating, and it was very
Mm.
traumatizing is the word.
Right.
But it was one of those things of, like, you're 8 and you're trying to grapple with, why
Wow.
does this continue to happen, right?
Yeah.
But I have the type of brain that I cannot be sad long. Like, I
Mm.
don't really, my brain is like, what's the movie Up, where it's like
Mhm.
squirrel? I'm very easily distracted. So here we are, my brother, sister, we upset, my mom's upset, my dad's left. And I said, man, I gotta do something to make my mother laugh. And I did some silly thing. I really don't remember what it was,
Yep.
but it broke the tension in my home.
Mm.
It made my mother laugh. And I made a mental note that anytime they get into an argument, I would go into my stuff. And so I would go into, telling little jokes, doing little silly things. And I got so good at it that when, like, I knew I was really doing well, when my dad, if he didn't leave, he would be in his room and we would be laughing in the front, and he would yell from the back, "What's all that noise going on?" I was like, oh man, I'm killing the night, man.
Right.
It's rocking and rolling. So that was my first
Wow.
insight of, hey man, I have the ability to shift the way that an atmosphere or how people are feeling in a moment.
Mm. Boy, I love that. I just love that. How important do you think laughter is in our everyday lives? Like,
It's vitally important. I think that the thing I often say on stage to folks, I say that you have to be deliberate about joy,
mm.
laughter, all these things, because sorrow doesn't care about your schedule. Like, sorrow doesn't send you an email and say, hey
Wow.
man, tomorrow morning is going down, so you need to be ready. So my thought is, if your joy tank is constantly filled,
Mm.
you can navigate through life difficulty. It's
Wow.
life difficult. Like, it's a difficult endeavor to navigate through life. So I think that joy and laughter can be a fuel to get us, to the places that we desire to be.
Wow. You probably come across this, but have there been family members or friends or coworkers in your life who, they see that you've put such a high value on laughter and joy and helping others, and maybe they don't share the same value in that, and so they kind of downplay it. How have you, a, have you come across those kind of people, and then b, how have you dealt with them, or tried to help them, or cross the bridge with them, kind of thing?
Oh, most definitely. Negative people are in everybody's family. They're not just in my family. They run the world.
Yep.
They just regenerate. I don't know. What's interesting to me, there's so many categories of people that fall
Yes.
into that type of description, right? So there's people that are in my family. So that I'll answer the family question. Like, so for instance, I have a number of pastors in my family. And when I
Mm.
first started doing my comedy, they were like, hey man, I can bring you to my church and talk to the youth. And I'm like, no, I'm not talking to the youth. I'm doing adult material. I'm a married man. I have a mortgage. We pay for life insurance. I'm not talking to the youth. So that was one of the ways in which try to minimize it.
Yes.
And one of the other things that I made it a goal because when you start doing something like stand up, you'll run into folks and they're like, "Hey man, are you still doing your little comedy?" Like no one in
Right.
any other phase of my life. I was in the military. Nobody was
Oh.
ever like, "Hey man, you still doing your little army deal for the government?" Like they never asked those, "Hey man, you still
Wow.
married to your wife?" Like they don't do those things. They
Right.
are you
Right.
still doing? So I wanted to be so successful that people would stop asking me that question.
Wow.
And that was kind of a driving
Wow.
motivator for me. Another thing that people would do is you having a conversation with some stranger and they were like, "Hey, what do you do?" "I'm a comedian." "Say something funny." Like, no, I'm not gonna say
Right.
anything funny. And if you pay attention, I'm going to say something funny. Like if you're
Right.
asking me to do the thing I'm going to do if we
Right.
just had a conversation.
Right. Right.
But when
Exactly.
you say something funny, now I'm like, this is not the food court at the mall. Like I'm not giving samples to. I'm not trying to. I'm not trying
Right.
to convert you.
Right.
I'm just going along my life, and you're like, "Hey, say
Right.
something, make me laugh." No,
Perform. Yeah.
yeah, why,
Ah,
why,
that's so good.
why?
I I contend. So I was a pastor for 26 years, and then I stepped out this last summer and started Speak with People. I do speaking and then communication coaching, and
Yeah,
all through those years, I would, interweave stories and just laughter and fun, but I'd run across some, believers who were just like, your message was great except for that laughter. Like, we got to get real
right,
serious when we talk about this stuff. And I contend
right.
that laughter is actually deep. Like, you've got to get through lots of layers of hurt and pain and sadness in order to just live this life where I can enjoy it and laugh and experience joy. And that's why I just appreciate, leaders like yourself who help people do that. It's
And
just huge for me.
the interesting part about that, joy is right on the other side of pain, right? So the same thing that makes you
Oh,
cry with some distance and time is the
right,
same thing that will make you laugh.
right,
And so there's this duality of emotion. Because here's other thing I contend about living a full life.
right,
A full life is not just happiness. Like you have to
right.
know what sadness is to experience happiness. You have to
That's right.
know what anger is to experience calm. So I think that joy and laughter is just another color on the
Oof.
beautiful portrait that I'm creating for my life. And it's a big part of it, but it's
Wow.
it's an element of all of it, right? And I
Yes.
wouldn't be able to appreciate the blues without the reds, without the greens, without the yellows.
Yep.
And so when you just shut down, I don't use purple. Why?
Right. Right.
What is
Oh,
wrong? I've had people coming to me at the end of the show. Yo, you good. You made me laugh. I don't mess around. I don't laugh. Why? Why? Who hurt you? And what damage do you need to be healed from
yep.
to freely laugh? Like you
Mm.
can just laugh. And then here's the other issue too. Like, so in a show, you'll have someone that's laughing loudly, but they are embarrassed because they've been told not to
Right.
laugh. So hey, let's not be so enthusiastic. Let's not be so demonstrative with your laughter. Why not? It's a comedy show.
Right.
This is the very place.
Right. This is be at home. Uh,
But those same people, I wonder if they're fans of a sports team, and do they sit there and when the team gets the first down, that
right.
was a very great play that
Right.
coach Dow. Like, no, you're like, another first down. You high fiving. I'm
Uh-huh.
like, come on, man.
That's right.
Come
Oh,
on, man. And then there's so many scriptures that talk about the joy of the Lord. Like,
yes.
does that disqualify laughter? Laughter is not and then, I think when you say comedy, I tell people this, I say all the time, comedy is like money. It's
Mm.
neutral. It's what you choose to do with comedy. The issue is people come into comedy with subjective experiences. Like, so
Mm.
I've said, if we say the word comedian, the listeners are gonna have a person in their brain. They're not just gonna say, oh, comedian is a word like tree, like you
Yep.
have a particular person. You're thinking Kevin Hart or Jerry Seinfeld. Like there's some image of
Right.
that. And so oftentimes people that use humor have to fight through the baggage that
Hmm.
folks bring along with humor, because some folks were picked on as a kid. And so now that makes them, if we're laughing at someone, it makes them remember when I was a kid, people teased me and folks laughed at me, so I will never
Yep.
laugh. Like, hey man, you have to separate that stuff. Those
Yep.
folks, they were mean. They shouldn't have done that to you. But that doesn't mean that you can't enjoy
Right.
laughter in a Christian context, in a professional setting,
Yep.
in any setting. I think humor, appropriate humor, is very needed. I've been asked to speak at middle schools, and one of the first things I'll tell the students, I'll say, "Hey man, your teacher lies to you often," and
Uh-oh.
everybody's like, "What?" Like the teacher's always lying, because I'm like, something happens in the class that's very funny. Somebody says something that's funny. The first thing your teacher says is, "That's not funny," but they leave the class and they go telling another adult what funny thing happened in class. So I
Uh-huh.
talk to them about the appropriateness of humor versus,
Yep.
just being comedic and humorous all the time. There's an appropriate time and place for humor.
Right. Right. So, you know, as a comedian, as speakers, uh, just wondering your take on this. Uh, do we make people laugh? Do we help people laugh? I was always just curious about, that process.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts on
that's a
that?
great question. I'm a big fan of Michael Jr. Michael Jr.
Mm,
had shifted his perspective of, he's offering an opportunity for people to laugh, and I think that's a great position in terms of the position of
mm.
service. But I'm competitive. I make people laugh. I am coming to take your laughter. If you're in my show, I want you to sit there and try not to. I'm coming for you. Like you're not. No, but no, I do think
I love that.
I do. I'm looking at the crowd and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
oh, you haven't laughed once? Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right. Mr. Blue Shirt guy.
You're on
They
my
try to
radar.
talk about my kids, right?
That's
Yeah,
right.
this is gonna get you. So
That's right.
but yeah, I do think that having, especially from how we do our business, we're
Mm,
doing our business to help leaders grow, help leaders communicate better. We want folks to um, amplify their message by using techniques to help them. So I think we have a different posture than someone who wants to be famous, and someone who wants to
mm.
say their name in lights, and someone whose
Yep.
goal is to, do things that bring notoriety and prestige to their self. And I think there's a balance. I want the same thing. I want to be able to sell tickets. I want folks to recognize me, and I want to be respected for my craft. But I do think that as we go in this with the gift, I think that there becomes an opportunity for you to reflect on how you're going to dispense it. Are you
Mm.
going to be a person that uses this and it helps to edify people and build
Yes.
people up
Yeah.
and inspire people? And I think that's where the like-mindedness of what
Mm.
what you're doing and what I do, we desire to do those things. So we do want to give people an opportunity to laugh, but I'm gonna come get your laughs if you don't. I'm gonna. If you don't want to move, I'm gonna help move you along. Nah.
I remember once I was speaking to a high school, and the bleachers, and boy, what a tough crowd. They're just like, oh, great, an assembly. And I'm telling my best story. My best friend's mom vacuumed up a bird, and she's screaming. Their pet bird. Like this story
Right,
always
right.
kills. And I look right in the middle of the bleachers, and there's this 16-year-old guy, shaggy hair, and he's like sleeping, cuddled with his girlfriend. And I thought, okay, all right, I'm not going to win out with a bird being sucked up. Like here, yeah, I'm done. But yeah, that's
Hey,
right.
speakers, if you want to damage your self-esteem, go talk to a group of high school students. Sign yourself up
Right.
for communication boot camp if you really want to know
Yep.
if you have what it takes.
Uh,
Matter of fact,
so,
don't go to the high school where they have like English and ELA. They got all these different subjects now.
yeah.
Go to the trade. Go to carpentry and masonry and welding. Go talk to those students. See if your message resonates.
Yeah. They'll make you work for it. Oh.
You will
Uh,
not be given cheap laughs. You're gonna earn every laugh.
um, I love listening to other comedian speakers, talk about their process and their work ethic and how they, deliver material. I was listening to Nate Bargatze the other day on his podcast, and I'm just trying to figure out like how in the world, I communicate, but I don't do what you do, like to be able to keep people engaged through this stream of laughter. What goes into
Right.
your process as you're developing your material, as you're, is it just this continual, you're on the lookout for, I got to remember that. I'd love to just kind of take a peek inside of your process.
That's a great question. So I'm gonna try to give you a tiered kind of how I've evolved into where I am. So initially, I did not even think about the audience. I was doing
Mm,
a lot of bad things when I would get up. I would think about material on the way to an event, and I would lead off with that
mm,
material. That was the worst. I would do that. I would also look over people's heads, like I never made eye contact. I was
mm.
kind of talking at the audience and not to the audience. And I did this for a while. I did this for like 2 years. Like
Yep.
I I was doing just well enough to keep going because I
Yep.
knew I enjoyed doing it, and I'm a great writer. Like I can create. The material was good.
Yep.
My performance was awful. So I
Mm,
think that's one of the things that I had to realize, that the material and the performance are two different things.
yeah.
Now your material can be so strong that it becomes the performance,
Yeah.
or your performance can be so amazing that the material's not as great.
Mm,
So you can play that game of, the 3-card Monty, right? You're
right.
moving and we like, I see it, but I know something's not right about this. Like it's not, somebody's pulling the wool over my eyes. But what I desire to be the type of performer is that my material and my performance are married, so they're both excellent. So you're
Mm,
laughing at what I'm saying and how I've constructed these jokes, but you're also looking at my facial expression and my pauses and when I move and how I move. And
mm,
so I think that those are parts that I don't necessarily remember a lot of folks talking to me about performance and material. Like
mm.
they just said, just keep getting on stage. Like that
Yeah.
was the advice
Yeah.
that I was given when I started. It was like, hey, just get on stage.
Yep.
Like, hey man, how would you get to sell out tickets? Oh, you just get on stage.
Mm,
How do I get more booking opportunities? Yeah, just get on stage.
yeah.
I'm interested in getting management. Yeah, just get on stage. So that was the answer.
Right.
It was like when we were kids, Robitussin, everything. Hey, get you some Robitussin. We got a headache. Oh, some Robitussin. So, like, that
Yeah.
was the answer to everything. And so I think I realized at some point that the performance is important and the audience is important. I
Mhm.
was talking to a young comic yesterday, and my performance greatly improved when I realized that Mike Goodwin was not sitting in the audience. So
Mm.
oftentimes I was writing to my sensibility. Now, I
Ah,
think you need to think your material is funny,
right.
but you need to recognize that this audience is not you. And so
Mm.
that I have this obscure reference sense of humor. I have this off the beaten path. I laugh at things that most folks wouldn't necessarily find funny. So I'm trying to write in that vein. And it's like, hey man, you're doing too much. Like, like bring this back
Yep.
and let's communicate. So I think the first thing that I realized about the act or the art of it was realizing that material was one thing
Mm.
and the performance was another thing. Then the other side of it was realizing that I'm having a conversation, but the other side's not necessarily talking back. So
Mm,
that's the posture of how I approach it,
yeah.
as if I'm just talking to some friends. So it doesn't seem bizarre that I'm standing in front of 100 people or 1,000 people or whatever the number is. I'm having a conversation.
Right.
I'm communicating my thoughts, my opinions, and they're funny. Like I think that especially for folks that are Christians or folks that have a faith a component to what they do. I've often seen sometimes people have been more faithful than funny, and it's
Mm.
like, if you want to be a comedian, then don't you got to be funny. Like that's the litmus test. Like,
Yeah.
but I've seen folks that begin to bomb. It's like, well, let me share my testimony. No, 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 that's not why we brought you here. We brought you
Right.
here
Right.
for some jokes.
So,
So those are components of how I create. Now I
yeah.
do the standard stuff. I have a notebook. I put bits in. I try to spend at least 2 hours a day when I'm being diligent
Yeah.
to review the things that I tape my sets. So I tape my sets and then I'll go back over those sets, and then I'll work. I'm constantly working on material, even material that I've been doing. I may have a new angle. There may
Mm.
be a new way to come at it, and so I'm always tinkering with my set.
Yes.
So my set won't be the same, even though there's some similar elements in it.
Right. Right. So, I'm just curious, from your perspective. A couple months ago, I just decided, okay, I'm going to go, try to do a 5 minute, open mic night.
Right.
And, I kind of put together my best stuff, and I'm like, okay, and I've, spoke long enough that I can keep within certain time parameters and all that. What I wasn't prepared though, because, I just went to a regular comedy club,
Right.
and the level of, I don't know how else to say it, but just the level of filth and
Oh,
dirt. I was like, I laugh. Like, I laugh at, like, that's what she said jokes and all that. But it
yeah,
was like
yeah, 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 yeah,
it
yeah,
was like a
yeah.
whole different world. Like, how have you, I'm sure you've had to, perform at a bunch of places where you're like, oh, it kind of bumps up against, like, what's that like for you? Or have you just steered clear? Yeah. Walk us through that.
Yeah, I immerse into it, right? So I am the guy that so in Colombia, the scene, we have a scene, but it's not a scene where it's thriving and comics are collaborative, and it's a scene. I don't, I often describe things as healthy or unhealthy.
Mm,
I don't know if it's not unhealthy, but it's not the most healthy scene either. So,
right.
but the way I started was I started in churches. So I started working opening for a guy by the name of Akintunde. He's a Christian comedian. Well, he was a secular guy that had given his life to the Lord, and he joined my church. So I spent kind of the first 4 years of my career under his tutelage, and he was like, no clubs. Like,
Mm.
no clubs. We do church venue. Even if the place is so alcohol, he's like, no. So I had that experience. But I always was like, hey man, what's going on over there? Like, I
Yeah.
always was kind of looking over there, like, like maybe, like, I want to go to regular school. Homeschool is great, but I wanna mix it up with all the kids, right? So I had that disposition. So I think by the time I got over to the club, I appreciated the opportunity of freedom in terms of what you can talk about. Because even in church context, there's limited things you can talk about, even if it's not vulgar. Like,
Right.
maybe even if it's not
Right.
uh, 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 offensive. There's levels of like, hey man,
Yep.
let's just kind of keep it safe,
Yep.
right? So over there, I could take a little bit more risks. I could be a little bit more provocative, if that's the word,
Yeah.
but it's just regular. It's just regular ideas and thoughts.
Right. Just real life
And
stuff.
so Exactly, like being a father, being a husband, like the real of it. Like me and my wife had this disagreement in the church. You know, people like, hey, let's not kind of like, no, like, yeah,
It
we been married for
happens.
22 years. Come on, man. What are you talking about?
Right.
There's been some disagree. We are disagreeing now. Like we are in the midst of a disagreeing season. We like saying seasons in church. This is a season of disagreement. Nobody will have those. They will talk about those seasons. But what I realized over there was when I got up, I don't curse, right? So for them to see a excellent comedian, and I'm practicing, like, so I'm I'm at open mics, like shooting with my left hand, like I'm trying things out. So these new comics that are, sacrilegious or just saying whatever most
Yeah.
foul and dark thing they can say, they have to watch me do 7 minutes of like, we're talking about board games, but it's funny. It's
Right.
undeniably fun. Like it's funny, and I have a presence about myself, and I'm navigating through this room, and somebody yells out something at me. I'm like, "Hey, man, isn't it past your bedtime, buddy?" And I keep on going with. So I can even like deal with hecklers and not be offensive and derogatory. And so I think that it's been a benefit for me to go in that area and see. Now the challenge for me is I need to see excellent work. Sometimes I go and I'm like, man, this is awful.
Yeah.
Like I could have
Yeah.
just stayed at home, man.
Yeah.
Like this is
Yeah.
bad. But I've also had folks reach out and say, hey, man, and want to have some, further conversations about things of substance and things that matter. And I think it gives other people that may be doing comedy a different way, a vision of like, oh, I can do this without cursing, or I can be a Christian and be okay with being a Christian in the open mic scene. So I think that I get it. I understand. Like you have to be girded up. Like you just can't be in there all willy nilly. Like you need to come with and I went in the Army after high school, and so I spent 4 years active duty in field artillery, and I think that 4 years, there's nothing life throws at me that I just can't kind of navigate from that experience.
It prepared you.
Yeah, that experience has given me kind of an advantage of whatever the scenario. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm on tour buses and we're sleeping in the little bunk part, and people are like, well, how's your man? I was in the Army, man. You think I care about sleeping on a tour bus?
Right.
Even being in those rooms, like in the military, the conversation, I'm like, oh man, this guys in the motor pool having discussions.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think on number one level, I give light, right? I bring light to a place that is very minimal light. Very minimal light.
Yeah.
And I try to befriend folks. I try to have the, hey man, man, great set. Like I'm really just trying to be the guy that folks, hey man, I'm a team player, I'm a part of this community. So
I love it.
I just do it different than how you do it, but I'm still a part of this community.
Yeah. I know this is a big giant question. And so, but I just would love to know what it was like when you walked out from behind stage and you're walking out on stage in America's Got Talent, and there's Simon and, how, what was just going through? Like, were you, I just love to know.
So the most jarring part of it was the morning walkthrough. So they bring you over the morning of, and so I had one of those experiences that I kind of felt like I was kind of being brought to the front of the line, so to speak. I kind of felt like, oh yeah, I'll be fine. I don't think it really landed on me until I was at the actual taping that, oh man, I could go home. Like,
yeah,
I think about it. It's similar to like I think about it like the March Madness, right? And so you have these 64 teams. In my brain, I'm thinking I'm a 1 or 2 seed, right? Like I'm thinking, I'm gonna get through these first couple of rounds, and then we'll have some tough games in there. But so I had that disposition until that morning, and then they walk you up to the stage, and there's a star that you got to go and stand on. So when I went and stood on the store, I was like, oh. And then they're explaining to you, okay, if you hear a buzzer, keep going. Like it takes 3, you can still make it through it with 3 yeses and 1 no. And I
Yeah.
was like, I can get a no? Like that it started to formulate, oh,
Yep.
I can get a no.
Yep.
And so that was very disjointing, disalarming to me. Just like, oh, this is real, right? So
Right.
then when I came back that evening to do the actual event, the guy in front of me murdered.
Oh,
He murdered. And I don't know how much I can divulge because I signed all these NDAs, but
yeah.
this person murdered. It was unexpected. And he destroyed to where the people were chanting his name in the audience. And I'm like, I'm next.
Wow.
We had to take a 5-minute like intermission because
Wow.
this guy had murdered so great. Like it was just electric.
Yeah.
And he was not doing anything close to what I was doing. Like he
Yep.
had props and he was doing things. I like I could throw the microphone from hand to hand. I literally thought I could kind of, but I was like, no, they may edit.
Uh-huh.
So I'm watching this guy just destroy the stage. And so
Mhm.
whatever nervousness I had, it was done. Because I was
Yep.
like, hey man, I had a good run.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is it. So I went out with I had nothing to lose.
Yep.
They just watched. These folks just watched the most amazing performance. And
Yep.
so similar if you're on a comedy show and somebody kills in front, you just want to ride that wave. So you want
Yep.
to jump on and continue on that wave. So once I got out there, and I even in my set, I didn't feel great about my first 30 seconds. Like
Mm.
the first 30 seconds was kind of a bridge to get me to. So I did a bit about nursery rhymes.
Right.
And so the first 30, it was just buying me time. It was
Yep.
like it's like a quarterback in the pocket, and you know this is going to be a long developing play. But if I can stay in the pocket, like we can throw a touchdown or at
Yep.
least get some significant yardage out of this.
Yep.
So that was kind of my position, and I was in that
Wow.
pocket, and I didn't feel good. I think Simon even said something and when he reviewed my performance, he said, you started off a little slow, and I hit a spot. Once
Yeah.
I got to that nursery rhyme stuff,
Yeah.
I was going. So I think
Right.
that's just, and it's comedy, right? So
Right.
at that point in my life, I've not done it in front of judges in that manner. I hadn't done it for
Right.
national television, but
Right.
I've done this, what I'm doing, a million times. Like I've walked out in front of people with a microphone and started talking.
Yep.
So once I started doing that, I was very comfortable.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, hey, this conversation today has been so incredibly helpful. I know that it will lift and bring so much joy and some really practical help some people. I just wanted, just to remind our audience, like, you are going to be at our conference, the Speakers Conference in March,
Yeah.
and I just wondered if you just do an invite to people, to
Hey,
like,
come out this March to the Speak with People conference. It's going to be incredible. I'm going to be there. I think Albert Tate's going to be there. There's
yep,
going to be some other people that's going to be there, and they're going to be tremendous too. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to share with you. I'm working on some things, but it's the idea around laughter is like a good medicine, or leadership
mm,
in laughter. It's going to be very tangible, very entertaining, and very practical things that you can walk away with that will make you a more polished, humorous, and engaging speaker. And we would love to see you. And I would love to high five you, shake your hand, hug, whatever, however you engage. But I'm coming, and I'm so excited for the invitation. I can't wait to see you in March.
well, fantastic. Hey, a couple rapid fire questions. I'll let you go.
Yeah.
Have you had a favorite place to speak, like a favorite venue, to perform?
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's great. Maybe not venues, audiences. I love date nights. Like
Mm,
date night comedy
yeah.
nights are like number one probably, but women's events, oh my goodness. That's a strong number two. Like women
Yeah,
know how to have a good time. They know how to have the girls' night out, whatever they call it. Have me in. I enjoy those.
I love it. Do you have an absolute favorite comedian? Like this is the person you just love to listen to?
Yes, but you can't say his name, so I call him Phil Fosby. You know, that's the guy. Niels Mosby was
Yep, I get it.
Dr. Heathcliff Huxtable
Jello
from
pudding.
the Phil Cosby Show.
Last question. Where is one place on earth you would love to visit with your wife?
Paris.
All right. I love it. Well, thank you, Michael Goodwin. Just so appreciate you joining us today, your vulnerability, your transparency, and just helping us. Like this was truly incredible. And I know this is going to help a lot of people. Mike, where can we find you on social media, website, all that kind of stuff?
Right. On social media, I'm at comedian Mike Goodwin on Facebook, on Instagram and Twitter. I'm at Bowtie Comedy. I'm not really on Twitter. Like I got a residence over there. I go and check the mail, but I'm not home.
Okay.
I just got a P.O. box. I have a P.O. box over at Twitter. But if you want to like engage with me, I'm over at Instagram and
Awesome.
Facebook. And
Awesome.
you can meet me there. I actually have a podcast called the Best Advice Ever podcast where you can check me out.
Awesome. And we'll
all the places that podcasts are found.
I love it. We'll post all of that in our show notes so you can find all of those. So thank you so much for being a part. Again, just a reminder to you, you're invited. If you speak from stages, you deliver presentations, you influence from behind a camera, we would love for you to be a part of the Speakers Conference. It's March 21, 23 in beautiful Clearwater Beach. Our hotel's right on the ocean. So you can walk the ocean before, you can watch the beach before we join for our sessions. You can hang out on the beach at lunch. I mean, it's just incredible, especially if you live up north and you need some warm weather. Go to thespeakersconference.com. Again, this podcast exists because words matter, and we believe healthy communication is oxygen for our relationships and leadership. So whether you communicate one-on-one, on a team, from a stage, behind a screen, we hope to this time challenged you and encouraged you to choose words that matter and to communicate in healthy ways. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.